Hello, welcome to another video with me. My name is Melissa, and today we are going to be talking about the Dark Essence Dark Classics. Before I delve into what it means to have a dark aesthetic with a classic face essence, I want to do a little disclaimer correcting some things that I've mentioned in my past essence videos. So I would start out my videos mentioning that you can have up to 3 essences. Now when it comes traditionally to John Kitchener's system, he actually has typed people before as all 7 essences, and it's more of a recent modern practice, if you will, of focusing on your 3 dominant essences. And personally, I actually am going to continue that just because after the 3rd essence, the 4th through 7 may feel a little bit too subtle to the point where it is not as obvious, whereas your 3 domineering essences will take over. If you think of it as a gradient, the more essences you add on, the less evident that you have those essences. Like it is a bit more less saturated compared to your other 3 dominant essences. If you start to exhibit all 7 essences, you might just have a classic face. When it comes to classic faces in general, they're very balanced. And I like to see them as they're kind of everything and all at once. They're not too soft and they're not too angular. When it comes to all 7 of the essences, if you are inspired by more than 3, I say go for it. When it comes to style and fashion, it is fluid, it should be fun, and I'm saying like it does make sense, like you can absolutely have more than 3 essences. But when it comes to like focusing and having it be a little less confusing, focusing on your 3 dominant essences seems to be a more streamlined path to finding your signature style. And if you were to purchase an essence reading from me, I am still going to be focusing on your 3 dominant essences. And jumping off of that point, when it comes to John Kitchener's essences, I don't believe in sticking to these hard, cold rules like we see in the Kibi body type system. John Kitchener's essence system was a derivative of the Kibi body type. Kibi body type came from McGimsey's system, and McGimsey's system came from Bell Northrop's system, and so on and so forth. All of these archetype type of systems that are meant to be a tool when it comes to finding your style and just making it easier to shop. All of these systems should be open for interpretations. How would you identify if you have a classic essence? Now, classic is the biggest key factor here is that they are very balanced. They are very symmetrical. You're not going to find the most dominant features versus some of the other essences. Dramatic is going to feel a lot sharper and have more dominant angular features. Natural is also going to be angular, but a bit on the softer side. My face is actually an example of a more natural face, but I do have an undercurrent of dramatic essence if you look at me from like the side. And Gamine is angular, but more dainty. Think Audrey Hepburn, Kristen Ritter. Ingenue is also going to have daintier features, but they're gonna be a bit on the softer side. Very doll-like, if you will. Think Devon Aoki and Christina Ricci. Romantic is going to have soft features as well. It's going to be very rounded. They're identified by their lush and round lips. And ethereal is going to be also soft, but they're going to have a bit of elongated features. They are often associated with outworldly features, but not in a bad way. It's almost extraterrestrial. They're also going to be on the opposite spectrum of dramatic, where they're going to be airy type of features, whereas dramatic features are going to be a little bit sharper and in your face. But then when it comes to classic essence, they're very in between. A classic face, like I've been mentioning, is very balanced and symmetrical. And it's not just they have a symmetrical face, but when it comes to makeup and clothing, they tend to look best in pieces that are also symmetrical and balanced, where if there's something out of focus or out of balance, it's a bit more obvious that it's off. Classic essence, like I've mentioned, they look good in subtle and understated pieces. They actually look very polished and almost like they glow in these understated pieces and very balanced. Whereas if a dramatic essence were to wear something a little bit more subtle, it will look a bit like something's missing, like you need something. Whereas these subtleties and understated patterns and textures, they actually feel at home on a classic. They're neither too angular or too soft or too rounded. They're kind of like it's a very Goldilocks type of face. One of my favorite ways to truly identify a classic face, or even see it as a secondary or tertiary essence, is their face almost feels like it could fit into so many other eras and time periods. If you were to see their face on a classic painting or the cover of a Gothic literature novel, it wouldn't look out of place. Now, another reason why I really like to focus on face essences is because it is more than just these words. I truly believe that to identify one's essence, or like all three of your dominant essences, it is a feeling and a vibe that you give off. So to know if you give off a classic essence feeling, the way classics feel to me is, particularly a dark classic, is they feel like Gothic classic literature, or like the main character of one. It's a very naturally collegiate and academic type of feel, so they almost look their best, or they look the most natural in dark academia, light academia looks, or things that feel very tailored. They feel like champagne in the afternoon. They are the epitome of elegance and high class. In terms of smell, I feel like they would smell like a whiskey, coffee note, or a paper type of perfume. And yes, there is a paper perfume. I believe Diptyque has a perfume inspired by old books, and I feel like a classic essence like that would be something in their bag. They also feel like old Hollywood films. We see a lot of classic faces actually in old Hollywood glamour. Now, my favorite part, when it comes to an essence, there are fabrics and silhouettes that feel the most at home on them. And when it comes to the classic essence, there is a stereotype that the cuts and garments that fit them best are kind of boring. And I want to break that stereotype, because when it comes to a classic essence, I want you to think of it more as they look at home in tailored and sharp pieces. Not extremely sharp, it still has to be balanced, but a lot of these tailored garments or traditional suiting tends to look quite at home on a classic. So think of a substantial fabric in weight and texture. So traditional suiting aren't too heavy in fabric or too malleable. Again, substantial. If the garment or entire ensemble feels clean and streamlined. So a lot of vest, collared shirts, A-line dresses, skirts, pleated skirts, tailored pieces. And the way I want to break the stereotype of a classic essence not being as exciting as the others, they glow in these designer details. And I feel like there are so many fun ways to experiment and have fun with these details. There are so many inspiration images that I have found where people or designers, they take collared shirts and they add grommets to it, and then add a sheer scarf to go through the grommets. They have these pins and details. And this is also where a dark aesthetic can really come in, and how to make a classic look feel a bit more alternative. You can do it in the pins. You can add piercings to a blazer. Harnesses. I feel like adding harnesses to a more corporate or business type of attire is a great way to make a look feel a bit more dark. Sheer layering is absolutely welcomed in the classic essence family, and the way you layer it, I feel like you can have a lot of fun. You can do sheer turtlenecks, you can do sheer robes over dresses. There are so many ways to go about it, and I feel like when it comes to a classic essence, there is so much room to experiment and have fun with. When it comes to a classic essence, my friend Sumalee actually put this into perspective for me, because she herself has classic essence, whereas I don't. So it was very helpful to have this perspective in mind. Now, when I was talking about glasses, as someone with a natural face essence with dramatic undertones and a bit of romantic, when it comes to finding the right glasses shape for me, the shape is extremely important, and the color of the glasses aren't so much. The glasses that fit a natural face, such as me, with a romantic and a dramatic undertone, is a more rounded and a wider cat eye. So something that, because my face has so much broadness in it, I don't want a glasses that is too small, nothing too thin. Basically, I need glasses that are soft but angular, such as my face. Whereas my friend Sumalee, who has a classic essence, she actually argued that when it comes to glasses, the shape itself isn't that important, but the color is. So whatever your color season is takes a dominant feature. So that's something to think about. If you have a very dominant classic essence, you can actually pull off a variety of shapes. And I think that also applies to cuts and silhouettes. You can pull off sharper details, softer details. It is much more favorable to find something in between, but it's all about finding that balance and also thinking about your color season. Because if you have a classic essence, as someone who is symmetrical and already inherently balanced, what is going to come forward is maybe your color season. Now, when it comes to hairstyles, it's going to be, you're gonna have a variety to choose from. But if you want to match this dark classic aesthetic that I am referring to, you want to match this another era that you're going for. So if you're going for a more modern day streamlined tailored look, you may want to look for something that is of the bun variation. I also find that shaved heads actually look extremely chic and natural on a classic face. Again, because you have this balanced, symmetrical features on you, close to a buzz cut type of look could work. I also think of Josephine Baker, who is of like this extremely short hair type of style, but it is also very quintessential 1920s. I feel like the curls that she has is perfect. I feel like also 1940s, very fluffy type of curls that show off the ears, that show off your face shape, also would look natural on a classic face. Playing around with claw clips and different types of buns or half updos. I feel like when it comes to a classic face, if you have a hairstyle that really shows off like your jawline and your ears, it gives you room to accessorize even more and maybe show off some of the accessories and earrings or collar clips that you may be showing off. Or you can go for a much more streamlined look. So think of like the super down the middle, kind of like a very glossed up type of hair, smoothed down aesthetic. You can also go for a very, very classic look of something of the Dita Von Teese variety. Now, Dita Von Teese has mentioned that when it comes to her hairstyle inspiration, she has taken inspiration between the 1940s and 60s, but it is not exactly glued to one era. So that's why I like thinking of Dita Von Teese as a great hairstyle muse, because it feels of another era, but it's not exactly written in stone which era that hairstyle is precisely. And that brings me to the muses that I wanted to talk about when it comes to having a classic essence. Now, Dita Von Teese does have some sharp features. I feel like classic is still very high up there. It's definitely in her top 3 essences. And I think overall she is a great classic muse. When it comes to classic dressing, everything tends to feel very intentional, and when it comes to Dita Von Teese and her ensembles, everything is very much intentional. Even her Pilates outfit, what she wears to burlesque, everything has a purpose and everything is balanced and curated, which goes hand in hand with her very classic essence face. She is also very transitional through the eras. Like I mentioned, her hairstyle and even her clothing itself is not exactly glued down to one specific era, but overall it still has this feeling of another era. She has very painted features. Now, this is a good tip for some makeup inspiration to take from if you have classic essence. A lot of her makeup looks is overall balanced. Everything is done. Her eyebrows, her lips, even down to the eyelashes. She has mentioned that an eyeliner look with no mascara is like champagne with no bubbles. Now, you don't have to have a full-on look like Dita Von Teese does, but I think the key here when it comes to a classic essence makeup look is just having this idea of balance. If you look at her makeup, even though everything is done to the nines, it feels very balanced and not too in your face. Everything always feels polished, and even in the simplest silhouettes. Now, it is often mentioned that when it comes to a classic essence, and this could also even apply to classic kibi body types, whether it is dramatic classic or soft classic, if you are wearing in the most streamlined, simple type of dress, most classics look ladylike. I don't want to say just ladylike because I want this to be gender fluid, or if you want to be more masked presenting. Instead of saying ladylike, do you look polished? Whereas if you may not have a prominent classic essence, if these more simpler silhouettes make you feel a bit mundane or boring. Classic essences tend to have this natural knack for just looking complete in these more streamlined looks. When it comes to a classic essence, they feel at home in designer details, and it's almost as if they are the epitome of quality goods. My friend Chelsey, who you may already know as a corporate goth icon, or she may be adorned on your Pinterest board, but she is a great example of wearing some of the most streamlined, tailored outfits that still have a dark aesthetic to it. She is known for her vest, her tailored trousers. Everything she wears always feels timeless and always has some form of designer details. Even though I do think Chelsey has a much more prominent romantic essence, I feel like classic is definitely a very close second. She is a great example of how to really honor a classic essence in a very timeless and balanced way, refined textures, and she knows how to play around with designer details. She is a great example of how a classic look can always feel exciting, and there's always an attention to detail there. The next muse I want to talk about is Chloe Hurst. I'm also putting her TikTok handle here, but you may actually know her as a renowned corporate goth. There was even an article written about her talking about her style as a corporate goth, and she is also a fellow dark aesthetic graphic designer. Now, when it comes to her style, like I mentioned, it is corporate goth at its finest. She knows how to make and take business attire and have a dark aesthetic spin to it. There is this sense of dark elegance. Now, I do think she has a bit of gamine essence in her face, just like Kristen Ritter does, but there is still this evident classic essence to her. There is a blend of sharp details and drapery, just like you would expect and almost want to have with a classic essence. There is this balance. And she has this face of another era. And overall, almost everything she wears, even down to the simplest ensembles, it still feels tailored and very prim. In a good way, in a very, very good way. Now, when it comes to makeup inspirations with a classic essence, there are many routes that you can go. It truly is a choose your own adventure. Classic essence has that perk of overall pulling off many looks all at once, as long as there is a sense of balance. It's gonna be a little bit different than what I talked about in last week's video about dark natural, where dark naturals almost glow in the messiness and imperfections. When it comes to the classics, it's just sense of balance, and what balance can be very different. For example, if you're wearing a shadowy eye makeup look, you may want to balance that with a lip color that matches your eyeshadow. If you are going for a 1950s aesthetic with the eyeliner, the cat eye, the angled brows, you may want to complete it with a painted red lip. If you are going for a 90s Naomi Campbell look, you may want to go the full yards. You can also do a 1920s deeper dark berry smoky eye look. Overall, the makeup look should take notes from being balanced and overall honoring the symmetrical features in your face. It is going to be very intentional, and there is something to a classic face where when they take notes from a bygone era, it is so evident. That's actually something I'm very jealous of when it comes to classic faces. Whenever I try to wear a 1950s, 1940s makeup look, it is not that evident that is what I'm going for, whereas those with more classic features, it is very evident, and it is it glows on them almost. And when it comes to the accessories and jewelry of a classic essence, I think of personalized and understated details. When it comes to accessorizing and adding the final touches to a classic essence's look, it's all about these designer details for you. You don't want something that is going to overwhelm, or it's all about the beautiful, subtle details. It's all in the little detail. Quintessential classic pieces I think of when it comes to jewelry, I think of a string of pearls. And of course, it could be in the variety that you like, but there's just something about pearls that screams that classic energy. This brand Shop Bad Times actually does a very interesting and unique take on pearls. They add this idea of medieval chainmail with that classic pearl look. So that's a great dark aesthetic way to go about a pearl necklace. The brand Yumono is one of my favorite brands. So she is a Hawaii-based brand, but she is known for her claw earrings. I actually am an owner of some of these claw earrings. Not sponsored, I just truly am a big fan and can speak on the quality of this. This is one of the few jewelry places where you can find gold and silver jewelry that won't tarnish and will truly last you years. I feel like when it comes to a classic essence, wearing a super tailored piece, but then you just have a plethora of earrings, that is a dark classic look. I also think of heirloom pieces that are so evidently from your great-great-grandmother. I think of brooches. And when it comes to brooches, this is your time to shine. This is where you can get a bit more obvious with that dark aesthetic, whether it is a spider-shaped brooch or brooch that is in the shape of a raven's skull. I think of collar pins. Shop Bad Times also has these skull-shaped pins that go on your collar, but you can also find a good variety as well on Etsy. I also think of pocket watches or timekeeping pieces. I also think of matching sets. So matching the jewel of your ring to that of maybe your nose ring or your earrings, or if you are doing the piercing details that I show on your blazers and collared pieces, maybe that could be the same piercing that you have. These matching sets, but still are dark and alternative details. Now, when it comes to the motifs, colors, and patterns for the dark classics, I think of editorial grays, charcoals, navy, saturated jewel tones that can be paired with these plaids, herringbone, pinstripes. I think of literature references. I really do think dark academia screams a dark classic essence. Now, any of the essences can wear a dark academia look, but the dark academia aesthetic truly feels the most at home on a dark classic. And as I keep mentioning, classic paintings remind me of this essence. I also think of candeleabras and Grecian busts. Again, this dark academia, very collegiate look. I think of the movies Kill Your Darlings, the Mona Lisa Smile, but also even darker fantasies such as Pan's Labyrinth and even Phantom of the Opera, which is a classic, but it has that eerie feel to it. And that's what it means to exude a dark classic look. Now, let's say you are starting from scratch and you want to start your dark classic wardrobe. What should you start out with and what should you prioritize before you spend all of your money? It's better to buy things in quality before quantity, because quantity will come in time and quality will last you a lifetime. Now, I recommend getting either a blazer or trench coat of your choice. Now, I like to make it either or. Some people don't really need a blazer in their lifestyle, but there are softer blazers that don't have extreme shoulder pads where it could be a bit more everyday and a bit more drapey. You can have just a good trench coat to throw on things. This is also very based off of your location. I think a vest is a great staple piece to have. Chelsey was a great example of that, where a vest is almost interchangeable for a throw-on top. It's also versatile to layer with, such as this image of the vest over a short sleeve turtleneck. And speaking of turtlenecks, I feel like the turtleneck is almost extremely essential in a classic wardrobe. It is one of the most collegiate silhouettes, but there are so many ways to spice up a turtleneck. So when it comes to having a turtleneck, to make it even more dark or more alternative, you can add piercings to the collar of your turtleneck. You can layer a silky dress on top of it. Button-ups are going to also be essential for a dark classic look, and there are so many fun ways to dress up your button-up. This image here literally looks like a binder clip, and somehow this looks extremely cool. There are ways to also add septum piercings to your button-ups, collar pins, brooches, safety pins. There's also ways to just adjust it to whatever silhouette you see best. You can wear your button up as literally just a cover up, you can tie it, you can tuck it in. It is actually very versatile. And also there are a variety of collars to choose from. I believe in finding a signature dress, like a very good throw on cocktail dress, preferably in black, but also you can still exude a dark aesthetic in some of these jewel tones and make it dark in the way you accessorize it. You can also get a streamlined skirt. I really like short skirts. I feel like when you add tights to them, they're very versatile to wear in more formal events as well as to the office. And boots and loafers are kind of like the go-to tailored look when it comes to a dark classic look. I feel like boots of the leather variety probably look best heeled if you're okay with it, but I think platforms still get that look across. And then loafers are probably one of the best, like just slip-on shoes, get in, out the door. Now when it comes to other accessories, I feel like that can come in time. Harnesses look amazing on these tailored pieces, but I feel like you want to get these foundational pieces first and then layer up and maybe save up for a good quality harness or belt of your choice. Watch this whole thing. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you're interested in a face essence reading where you want me to tell you your 3 dominant face essences, I also include a mood board and an in-depth analysis of why I believe those are your 3 facial essences. And also, it's just the beginning of finding your signature style. Currently, my slots are closed, but they will be open again February 23rd. And I want to give a special thanks to my Patreon members. I am eternally grateful for your support and all the kind words that I get from you guys. Patreon members, $1, $5, and $20 tiers will get early access to my face essence and astrology reading slots, which will be February 21st and 22nd. I hope you have a lovely week. And for those of you who miss Miss Gengar, she is right here. She was never far. She says hi, and she misses you too. All right, bye.